Encounter with a Pob, Ghost Dog Howling Dog. My name is Cham. I'm from a rural village. About 30 years ago, I was around 20 years old, considered a young man. In those days, education wasn't very important. Finishing only Pratham 4, 4th grade, was enough to read and write. As for the adults in the village, they finished mandatory education at Pratham 4 and no one studied further. Perhaps it was because the financial situation was quite difficult and schools for higher education were far from the village, requiring travel of many kilometers. Villagers mainly worked in farming and needed the labor of their children and grandchildren to help with work in the fields. When I finished Pratham 4, I had to help my parents with farming. Some friends who finished Pratham 4 at the same time, around 16 to 17 years old, were already married and had children. I myself was considered a good-looking person, ruggedly handsome like a rural young man, and I had a girlfriend from a different village. We were just starting to get serious, dating happily for almost a year. After finishing work at home, we would have dinner. After that, around 7 p.m., I would go to my girlfriend's house, or as we called it, courting. Girls 30 years ago didn't watch movies or television because there was no electricity in the village. At best, they would listen to a radio cassette player that used batteries, listening to folk tales or northeastern folk music. The girls would bring out work to do, such as weaving baskets, making fabric, tying fishing nets, pounding rice, and many other things, waiting for young men to come and court them. While courting, the young men would help the girls with their work. It was a simple rural happiness. My girlfriend Nong Toe was my cousin, 1 year older than me, but I called her by her nickname Toe because we were very close, like soulmates or death buddies, you could say. As for Chin, he was Nong Toe's cousin, a very helpful and kind person, especially in the mornings. He had several girlfriends he was courting, but he seemed to like Nong Toe's older sister very much. So everyone, whenever we went courting, we would invite Chin to go with us. Because the distance from my house to my girlfriend Nong Toe's village was about 2 kilometers. Walking at night wasn't very far. We would walk and talk, teasing each other, and it was fun. When we reached Nong Toe's house, I would help Nong Toe with her work and Chin would talk with Nong Toe's older sister named Horm. Time would pass until almost midnight and the two of us would go back home. As for Nong Toe's parents, they would give the young couple space to talk, so they would go to bed first. This was the routine every night unless it rained or there was still work to be done, then we wouldn't go. Tonight too, after Chin and I finished dinner, we made plans to go courting. Tonight Chin dressed very neatly with a white pa khao ma traditional Thai cloth with a red and white pattern tied around his waist. As for me, I wasn't far behind. I also had a pa khao ma, but mine was blue and white. I used it as a headscarf and also to swat away mosquitoes. We left the house around 7 p.m. and walked along the road towards Nong Toe's house. Tonight we hardly needed to use a flashlight because the moonlight was bright enough to see the way. After walking for about 1 kilometer, there was a junction leading to another village on the left, but the house we were going to was to the right. This intersection is called the three-way junction or the three-way split. Right at this spot, Chin said to me, "Hey Cham, you wait here for a moment, I want to pee tonight." I felt surprised. If Chin wanted to pee, why didn't he just pee by the roadside like every other time? Chin walked towards the left fork of the road and disappeared behind the trees. After only a moment, he walked out. I thought Chin had really gone to pee because he came out so quickly. After that, the two of us continued walking towards Nong Toi's house. Tonight, Nong Toi and her older sister had taken the black sesame they had planted and were grinding it to make black sesame paste. After removing the dry hulls and leaves, only the black sesame seeds remained. They collected them in a bottle. Nong Toi said it was for mixing with glutinous rice balls because eating black sesame is beneficial. While talking, we heard the sound of an owl hooting, so I suggested to Chin that we go back home. The next morning, we went to work in the fields as usual. By evening, it was time for courting again. Chin and I, the same two people, went to Nong Toi's house. After walking for a while, when we reached the three-way junction, Chin had a stomachache. Then Chin said to me, "Hey Cham, wait for me for a moment, I have a stomachache tonight." As always, Chin walked towards the left fork. He disappeared behind the bushes. I watched, but the dark shadow of the trees blocked my view. So I kept wondering why. Whenever we reached the three-way junction, Chin would have a stomachache and need to pee every time. I waited until Chin walked out, then we continued walking. Along the way, Chin must have noticed my curious look and said, "What's wrong with you today? You're not talking much." I replied that there was nothing wrong, but in my heart I was really wondering what Chin was doing behind the bushes. Tomorrow morning I had to follow and find out for sure. When we reached Nong Toi's house, Nong Toi's parents were already asleep. Only Nong Toi and her older sister were left. Chin went separately from me to help Horm pound rice, while I helped Nong Toi thresh rice to remove the hulls. Even though it was the middle of the night and it was dark, Nong Toi's house used a carbide lamp, which used kerosene and air pumped in to make it as bright as daylight. We worked and talked until it was almost midnight. Then we left to go back. The next morning, after I had checked the rice fields, I borrowed my uncle's bicycle to ride to the three-way split to satisfy my curiosity about what Chin was doing there every time. When I reached the three-way split, I walked into the bushes and found a pile of animal heads, probably the heads of stolen and slaughtered cows, left after the meat was taken. The skulls were discarded. The calf skull looked like it had been licked clean. I was surprised, or maybe people came here regularly to eat secretly. With a playful and mischievous mood, I wanted to play a trick on Chin. After I returned home by evening, I went back to the three-way junction again, this time with a small bag of rice, about 2 kilograms already prepared. I left it near the calf skull. When it was time for courting, Chin and I went together as usual. When we walked to the three-way split, Chin had a stomachache and needed to pee again. Then Chin said to me, "Hey you, go straight here. I'll be right there, I have a stomachache tonight." I replied, "Okay, hurry up then." I secretly smiled and thought, there's no way I'm waiting, because I knew Chin would probably find out I played a trick on him and would definitely come out and hit me. So I ran ahead to Nong Toi's house first. When I reached Nong Toi's house, I saw that Nong Toi's father hadn't gone to bed yet. When he saw me running frantically, he asked, "What are you running from? And where is your friend?" I then told Nong Toi's father everything, but before I could finish speaking, I heard the sound of hooves running nearby, fast and loud. Nong Toi's father quickly lifted the ladder and flipped it over, with the bottom side up and the top side down. Then he said that he had encountered a Pob ghost. According to ancient beliefs, whoever knows or sees who is a Pob ghost will die when the sun rises. Therefore, to prevent anyone from knowing its true form, it must kill the person who knows its secret. Nong Toei's father said not to come down from the house until the sun had risen. And it was true what Nong Toei's father said. Chin was a Pob ghost. His head was human, but his body was a dog. But he couldn't come up. He just kept howling, "Not my house, not my house, not my house," running around like that all night. No one could sleep at all. At that moment, I remembered that I had to go to work in the morning around 5 a.m. I had an appointment with my father. Therefore, I had to go back before 5 a.m., but the sun hadn't risen yet. The Pob ghost would definitely kill me. I told Nong Toei's father that I would go back home before the sun rose. Luckily, Nong Toei's father had a magic incantation. He told me to gather 7 tamarind leaves from the outer edge of the porch. After that, he performed a ritual to bless the leaves, putting them in a chicken egg. Then he told me to run and not look back. If I heard the sound of hooves running close behind, I should throw the first egg backward. A Pob ghost likes white things. It will go back to gather its friends. Take that opportunity to run for your life and don't let it catch up, because if it catches you, you will surely die. Do this with every egg until you reach home. When you run up to the house, flip the ladder over. It won't be able to follow you up. I got 7 chicken eggs, held them in my hand, and quickly jumped down from Nong Toei's house and ran back home. At that moment, I heard the sound of hooves running after me. When the sound got very close, I threw 1 egg backward. I felt the sound of something chasing me start to fade and become silent. I continued running quickly. After a while, I heard the sound of something chasing me again, fast and close. So I threw the second egg backward. The sound of something chasing me disappeared again. I kept doing this, running and throwing, until I had only 2 eggs left, but the distance remaining was about half a kilometer. I thought to myself, if I run out of eggs before I reach home, what will I do? I will definitely die. Even though I was very tired, I kept trying to run. I wasn't thinking about my life anymore. Then I heard the sound of hooves getting closer again. So I threw the 6th egg and sped up as much as I could. At that moment, I don't know where the strength came from. Adrenaline is like that, isn't it? I had never run so fast and never felt so tired before. Finally, all 7 eggs were gone. I reached home just in time. I ran up to the house and quickly flipped the ladder over, turning it away from the house. At that moment, I was standing there panting, feeling safe. The Pob ghost ran around my house and then flew up onto the roof howling, "Not my house, not my house." I sat there watching and then fell asleep from exhaustion. The next morning, I was startled awake because I heard the sound of Auntie Mon, who lived nearby. Auntie Mon was Chin's mother. She was crying and shouting in the house, "He's dead, he's dead. My Chin is a Pob ghost. He's lying dead inside the mosquito net." The neighbors and I quickly ran to Auntie Mon's house. When we arrived, we saw Chin's body lying dead on the bed, his head inside the mosquito net. The part that was a dog's body was outside the mosquito net. "My Chin is dead, my Chin is a Pob ghost." That sound echoed in my ears. From that day to this, 30 years have passed and that sound still echoes. My Chin is dead, my Chin is a Pob ghost. I still feel regret and blame myself, thinking that it was because of me that my beloved friend died like that. Oh Chin. The Legend of the Black Thing. Oh Uncle Noi. Kun had recounted that this story happened several decades ago. His uncle told him that at that time someone in his father's family was afflicted by a black thing. His father's family had 5 sons, the eldest son named Ek, the second son named On, the third son was his father named Oy, the fourth son named Aoud, and the fifth child was a daughter named Nam. Then there were 2 younger daughters, Nut and Ni. Everyone was very close and loved each other dearly. Their way of life was like that of typical northeastern families, raising cattle and buffaloes, farming rice fields and gardening. When the sons in the family finished their studies, they all went to work in factories. Uncle On was interested in magic and spells, so he ordained and studied with a revered monk who was his father's younger brother. My father also went to work in Bangkok. Uncle Odd married someone from a different province. As for the younger sisters, they continued their studies. After about 3 years, everyone received news that their father had passed away. On the first day of the funeral, only Uncle Ek and the younger sisters were at the ceremony, along with Uncle Odd and my father. By the second day, Uncle Odd arrived, leaving only my father, who still hadn't arrived. It wasn't until the day of the cremation of his father's body that my father arrived and said that the car broke down on the way, which made him several days late. Because in those days the roads weren't as good as they are now. At 2 p.m. after the cremation of their father's body, Uncle Ngon came down from the house. When the siblings were all together with their aunt and uncle, Uncle Ngon made a plan to go to the fields the next day to find something to cook and eat together. After that, everyone went to bed. Early in the morning, the men took their hunting equipment and went out to find food, telling the younger sisters to buy alcohol and prepare ingredients for cooking. The uncles kept searching and found several wild animals. Uncle On went to search for pheasants. While searching, he came across a small square box about the size of a cigarette pack. Uncle On didn't think much of it, so he picked it up and put it in his bag and took it home. At this time, no one knew. On the way back, Uncle Ngon, who was known for his sensitivity, said he had a strange feeling the whole way back. After arriving home, they cooked and drank until they were drunk all day. It wasn't until my father got up to go to the bathroom and accidentally stepped on Uncle On's shoulder bag. At that moment, when my father went to the bathroom, he smelled something strange. It was a very foul smell. After a moment, the smell disappeared and my father didn't think anything of it and went back to drinking. When it started to get dark, after they finished drinking, bathed, and gave medicine to the cows and buffaloes, they all went to bed. The next morning, after my father woke up and his siblings were preparing food, Uncle Ngon saw my father's pale face and asked, "What did you do?" My father said he would tell him later, but let him finish eating first. While my father was eating, he suddenly stood up and ran out to vomit. Everyone was startled. Uncle On quickly followed to check and saw that the vomit had blood and some black and gray matter mixed with the blood. When Uncle On saw it, he was even more startled and told my father, "You've been afflicted by something." After that, Uncle On took my father to the temple to see a revered monk to help remove the affliction. The monk began a ritual. After a while, the ritual was completed. When my father's condition started to improve, my father slowly turned his head towards the front door of the house. He saw a dark shadow walking towards him. When my father saw it, he was very startled. The shadow kept getting closer. My father could only lie there, staring, unable to do anything. Then the dark shadow stepped on my father's chest. My father was in a lot of pain, unable to breathe until he lost consciousness. The next morning after my father woke up, Uncle Ngon came to visit. Then my father ate and vomited as he did earlier. When the monk heard about it, he shook his head. After that, he took an egg that had been used in the ritual and cracked it on the ground. A strong, foul smell like a dead body filled the temple pavilion. The monk then told them to quickly return home and seal the house tightly, blocking all entrances, trying to prevent the black thing from coming back. At this time, it was almost sunset and the sky was beginning to darken. My father and Uncle An rushed back home by motorcycle. The road back home was a small rural road that only one pickup truck could pass at a time. Both sides of the road were grass fields and there were no lights on the road, so it would be very dark at night. After driving for a while, my father saw something in the darkness coming towards him quickly. My father was startled and shouted, "What's that?" and swerved the car to the side of the road. Just then, a pickup truck drove past quickly. The wind from the pickup truck hit my father and Uncle An's faces fully. After a while, they saw a dark figure like a woman walking across the road and disappearing before their eyes. When Uncle An saw it, he said, "What does it want from us?" My father remained silent. After that, they returned home, being even more careful than before. When my father and Uncle Nan reached home, they quickly told everyone in the house to go inside and close the doors tightly. Uncle Nan performed a protective ritual inside the house to prevent bad things from happening to the family. Everyone in the house was wondering what was going on. Uncle Ek asked my father what was wrong, but my father replied that he would talk about it later. Now take the siblings into the Buddha room first and don't let them out. After about 3 a.m., everyone in the house was startled because they heard the cows and buffaloes crying out mournfully, their cries echoing throughout the house. My father quickly grabbed a gun and brought out 2 barrels, telling Uncle An, "Bless this gun for me." Everyone was startled and scared by my father's gun, fearing that something bad would happen. After Uncle An blessed the gun, he asked my father what he was going to do. My father handed one gun to Uncle An but didn't say anything. After that, my father ran towards the cow and buffalo pen. When Uncle An saw this, he ran closely after him. Suddenly, my father stopped and stood still, causing Uncle An, who was running after him, to run directly into my father. Because my father was strong and well-built, Uncle An fell backward. When he got up and sat down, Uncle An asked my father, "Oi, why did you stop?" My father said, "Paid, look, 5 cow heads are dead." And it looked like some kind of dark shadow was eating their flesh. As soon as my father finished speaking, my father shone the flashlight towards that spot and was almost shocked. He saw a figure standing in front of him with glowing red eyes, nails about 1 hand span long, and a completely black body. In its mouth were 2 fangs which were chewing loudly. It stared at my father and Uncle An with bloodshot eyes. Uncle An wasn't afraid and said it couldn't do anything to him. Even though my father was physically stronger and more robust than Uncle An, he had no magic or spells. Uncle An was worried about my father, afraid that my father would panic and the black thing would enter his body. When Uncle An observed my father's eyes and demeanor, he saw that my father showed no fear at all. Oi then shot the gun at that figure and the figure disappeared. My father told Uncle An to go back and take care of the people in the house. After that, Oi drove a motorcycle to follow that figure. Uncle Nan came back and told everyone to quickly go inside the house. Uncle Ek was suspicious and asked what was going on and why there were gunshots. But Uncle Nan didn't answer and said that when everything calmed down, he would tell them. As it neared morning, the sun hadn't risen yet, but there was some light. Everyone prepared to go to the temple, but they were still worried because my father hadn't returned since last night. Not long after, my father drove back with Uncle Ode's shoulder bag on the motorcycle, which had fallen off the motorcycle. My father's body was covered in mud and his combat knife was tucked in his back waist. When everyone saw my father return, they were relieved that he was safe. After preparing themselves for a while, they went to the temple to see a revered monk. When they arrived, the monk said, "You were in a lot of trouble, Oi. Luckily, Uncle Khan came to help you." The person named Khan was my father's brother. Then the monk told them to bring Uncle Ode's body to him. The monk told everyone to lie down, except for my father and Uncle On. The monk then asked my father, "Where did you go last night?" My father replied, "I chased it around the house and then I found Odd's bag there." Let's talk about the story. A few days earlier, my father had found Uncle Odd's shoulder bag. He didn't know what was inside. It smelled terrible. When the monk saw it, he walked over and said, "Give it to me." After that, the monk continued the ritual, telling my father and Uncle On to build a fire. After the ritual was finished, the monk took that bag and threw it into the bonfire and said it was a curse that black magic practitioners had put on people. My father was still wondering why Uncle On had asked him where he went last night, even though my father was around the house all night. So he said, "P, didn't you hear me? I was running around the house and shouting." The monk then interrupted and said, "I told you, you almost didn't make it. Luckily, Uncle Khan came to help you. He helped conceal you from that demon." And the monk added that that demon had blinded everyone in the house so they couldn't see you clearly. The next morning, the monk told Uncle Ngan to recite an incantation to invite the king of the underworld to come and take that demon down to Avicii hell. The monk didn't recite it himself because he was old, and that incantation required physical strength to bear the presence of the king of the underworld, which the monk's body couldn't handle. After Uncle Ngan finished reciting, he asked Uncle Odd, who had just come out of the pig pen, how he was. Uncle Odd said that after that sound stopped, he heard nails scratching the sides of the pig pen he was in. Everyone spoke in unison as if echoing Uncle Ngan. After that, Uncle Odd said he was traumatized. From now on, he would never bring anything strange back again. After that day, everyone went their separate ways and lived their lives as usual. It came from the cemetery. Iduang, the city boy, was a nickname for a rather mischievous and active little boy. He was from the north, from the northernmost province of Thailand. The village where Iduang lived was quite far from civilization. The main occupations of the community were traditional farming and foraging for forest products, such as collecting mushrooms, collecting wild vegetables, and finding ant eggs, among others. On Saturdays or Sundays, he would often invite his friends to go fishing. Iduang attended a school near his home, a school that offered education up to Mathayom 3, 9th grade. He was a bright and clever child, quick-witted and had a good memory, so he always got the first rank in his class. This led him to choose to study at the district school at the Mathayom 4 to 6 level. Actually, his parents wanted him to study to become a police officer. He was a good student. After finishing Mathayom 6, his friends invited him to take the teacher's college exam in a nearby province. Luckily, he passed the exam, so he decided to study at the teacher's college with the ambition of truly developing his village. Actually, Iduang's real name was Duang Kayu. 30 years ago, this name was considered very popular and common in the village. When Duankayo graduated from the teacher's college with an associate degree, he heard his friends talking about trying to apply for teaching positions in other provinces first to gain experience, and then transferring back to teach in their own village. Duankayo agreed and decided to apply for a civil servant position in the central region. As expected, Duankayo passed the exam as one of the top 10 in the country, and was assigned to teach at a primary school in Phra Nakhon Si Ayutthaya province. Kru Duankayo taught students at the Pratham 2 level, 2nd grade, teaching all subjects but mostly focusing on math, Thai language, and after school. What were they going to do? Just being able to read and write was considered good enough because in those days studying wasn't very popular. Growing up and working in the same profession as their parents was enough to make a living. The school where Kru Duankayo taught was a temple school in Amphoy Wang Noi, Ayutthaya province. Although it was a province near Bangkok which was definitely developed, this district seemed to have been overlooked. The characteristic of this village was very rural. Most villagers worked as rice farmers, so they built their houses along both sides of the canal. The road into and out of the village was very difficult. There was a shared vehicle for hire for people in the village to go buy things in town, leaving once in the morning and returning once in the evening. But if someone missed the vehicle, they could take a long-tail boat down the canal. Kru Duankayo preferred traveling by long-tail boat because riding the waves was fun. The villagers there were generous. They would share whatever they had. Their culture and customs were still well preserved. Kru Duankayo, being a teacher there, was happy to gain new experiences he had never had in the north. There were plenty of fish in the canals and swamps. The villagers there would make fermented fish paste and pickled fish themselves, and eat lotus stems with fermented fish paste almost every day. In the morning they would hear the sound of scraping coconuts to make fermented fish paste almost every morning, which was a way of life that Kru Duankayo liked very much. But there was one thing he didn't like: the school, which was a temple school, and the teacher's housing was next to the temple. In the central region, villagers preferred to keep bodies for years and then hold a cremation ceremony, which was different from the north, where they usually held cremation ceremonies 3 or 7 days after death. If the body was bloated, they would probably use a lot of firewood to burn it. The classroom where Kru Duankayo taught was next to the room where bodies were kept. It wasn't exactly a room because it only had a roof and brick pillars forming open compartments to keep the bodies. Sometimes they would take a body out by pulling the coffin out and placing it there. Kru Duankayo and the students saw this so often they became accustomed to it. When the villagers pulled a coffin out and opened it, they would see a dry body with bones and clothes piled up, turning brown and black. Kru Duankayo thought it was a form of wisdom to keep the bodies until the blood and fluids drained out and dried, then cremate the body, which saved a lot of firewood. The teacher's housing where Kru Duankayo lived was near the crematorium. There was only a wire fence separating them. When they cremated a body, they would see the red flames clearly. Sometimes there was a smell like burning meat, which made them not want to eat grilled pork for several days. At first, Kru Duankayo was scared too, but after staying there for a long time, he got used to it and was no longer afraid. Regarding seeing things in the cemetery, Kru Duankayo also heard from a student's parent that someone had been haunted by a ghost until they went crazy and were delusional for several days. He said that a man in the village named Uncle Ta was a motorcycle repairman in the village. He would often ride his motorcycle to buy things in town. One day it rained heavily and Uncle Ta was caught in the rain in town. As it got dark, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to see the way, so he rode his motorcycle through the rain back home because there was no electricity in the village at that time. People were still using kerosene lamps for light. After riding for a while, the rain started to lessen, but the road was quite dark. As he rode his motorcycle to the village junction, Uncle Ta saw a young woman standing there waving and calling out. He braked his motorcycle and stopped to ask. When the young woman said she was going to the next village, which was the same village as Uncle Ta, he gave her a ride back home because he saw that it was already dark. In his heart, Uncle Ta thought the young woman was pretty and well dressed. He didn't know whose child she was in the village. Actually, he knew almost everyone in this village, but he kept his thoughts to himself and didn't dare to ask, only asking the young woman to tell him the way back home. Uncle Ta rode his motorcycle past the fields, past familiar houses along the village road. He was surprised that today, entering the village, people were closing their doors one after another. After passing the temple in the village, there was a junction next to the temple. Uncle Ta was confused. Where was this place? Even though he was a local and knew every corner of the village, why was he confused about the route today? Or perhaps it was because the light wasn't enough. After a moment, the young woman pointed the way and said, "Stop at the front gate of this house. This is my house." The young woman said this calmly. After looking into the large house that was dark and shadowy, he felt relieved that he had safely taken the young woman home. When he was about to leave, Uncle Ta tried to find his way out but couldn't find it. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in the cemetery, riding his motorcycle in circles around the crematorium. He was startled and shouted loudly until the monks in the temple came out to see and found Uncle Ta had fallen off his motorcycle, lying there staring blankly, unconscious. After that, people said he had a high fever and was delirious for several days. This story might just be a tale because Kru Duan Kayo also lived near the cemetery and didn't see anything. The teacher's housing where Kru Duan Kayo lived had another teacher's house nearby where two other teachers lived together. Sometimes when they were bored or lonely, they would invite Kru Duan Kayo over to drink alcohol together, as is typical for rural teachers. The story I'm about to tell is from a real experience. One day, the two teacher friends were feeling uneasy about something and wanted to have a drink. Kru Duan Kayo also joined them. It just so happened that that day, Kru Duan Kayo had bought 1 kilogram of pork with the intention of making sun-dried pork to eat for several days, because travel was not very convenient there. But when his teacher friends invited him, he brought the pork to grill and eat together. As they talked and ate, the pork tasted better the later it got. After the first bottle of alcohol was finished, the teacher friends who'd like to drink went to get a new bottle and opened it. At that moment, there was still almost half a kilogram of grilled pork left, but the charcoal in the grill was about to go out. Another friend named Kru Nid said, "Wait a moment, I'll go get some charcoal." Kru Nid disappeared for a moment and returned with red glowing charcoal. Kru Duan Kayo asked, "Where did you get that?" Kru Nid replied drunkenly, "I got the charcoal from the crematorium." When he heard this, Kru Duan Kayo cried out in shock, "Hey, don't play around like that. I'm not joining in." Then both Kru Manop and Kru Nid laughed at Kru Duan Kayo's fright. Kru Nid said, "It's okay. The body they burned was gone a long time ago. There are no bones or ashes left, only these red-hot charcoals. There are no ghosts here. But Kru Duangkayo didn't listen. He stood up and said, "Enough is enough. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed." Then Kru Duangkayo went back to his teacher's housing, leaving the two teachers to continue drinking. Around midnight, Kru Duangkayo felt that the sounds from his two friends had stopped. He thought they had gone up to the house to sleep. As for Kru Duangkayo, after finishing his shower, he went to bed, but for some reason he couldn't sleep and tossed and turned until around 1 a.m. when he heard the sound of an owl hooting repeatedly. Kru Duangkayo sat up and looked out through the window towards the teacher's housing of Kru Manup and Kru Need. Suddenly, he was startled. He saw a young woman dressed in white, like someone who had been to the temple, walking in circles around the teacher's housing of Kru Manup and Kru Nid. Then she stopped in front of the window where Kru Duangkayo was watching, with a blurred face. Kru Duangkayo stared in shock, his eyes wide open even though the young woman's mouth wasn't moving. Kru Duangkayo heard what she said clearly. "You two who are sleeping will be followed to take your souls. If you don't go to ask for forgiveness from the crematorium tomorrow and bring the ashes from the crematorium along with candles to ask for forgiveness at the cremation mound, you will surely face trouble." After hearing this, the image of the young woman slowly faded away. The next morning, Kru Duangkayo immediately went to tell his two teacher friends. Kru Manup and Kru Need said they didn't see anything last night and slept well, and they didn't hear the owl hooting. Then they laughed and said they didn't believe him. So Kru Duangkayo went back to get the charcoal from the crematorium from last night along with candles and went to ask for forgiveness by himself. 3 months after that, Kru Duangkayo transferred back to teach in his hometown, according to his original intention. He lost contact with the two teachers and doesn't know what happened to them. Reply of the voice. The story I am about to tell happened over 10 years ago. I am from Mukdahan province. After graduating, I got a job as a salesperson for a factory in Rayong province. My mother didn't really want me to move and work far from home because she was worried about me, her only son. Before I traveled to Rayong, my mother took off a Buddha amulet necklace that she always wore. My mother put it around my neck. I immediately refused and told my mother to keep the necklace. I didn't usually wear Buddha amulets anyway. It felt uncomfortable. And this necklace was one that my mother wore regularly. If she insisted on giving me something, I asked if I could wear another Buddha amulet that my mother kept instead. But my mother insisted on giving me that specific Buddha amulet. She said that wearing a Buddha amulet would protect you and keep you safe. She told me to keep it with me always. It would help ward off danger. But if I didn't believe in its sacredness, I should wear it to be mindful and not live carelessly. And my mother told me to make merit often because the amulet would protect good people. I listened and started to agree with my mother, so I accepted the amulet and wore it around my neck. A few days later, I traveled to work in Rayong. In the morning of each working day, I would clock in and then have a meeting with my sales team. After that, each salesperson would go out to meet customers outside the factory, so I didn't spend much time at the factory itself. One day, while I was sitting and drinking coffee in the factory's employee kitchen, I heard a loud shriek, "Ah!" coming from inside the kitchen. I walked over to see and saw 4 to 5 people helping 2 women who had fainted, bringing them to lie on the sofa. A man was walking into the kitchen to get some water. I asked, "What happened to those 2 women, Nong?" He replied, When they were working, they suddenly screamed and fainted, so we helped bring them here for first aid. Not long after, one of the women woke up from fainting. She looked like she was afraid of something. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, and her hands were trembling. The woman didn't say anything except that she wanted to go home. A moment later, the other woman also woke up, but she seemed more conscious than the first one. She told the people in the room that when she was working, she saw a dark shadow moving towards her. She was very scared and screamed, and then the dark shadow hit her until she fell down. After that, she didn't feel anything else. Sitting in the kitchen, I heard everything the woman said. I wondered what that dark shadow was, but I didn't go in to ask. After that, I heard the women's supervisor tell the two of them to go home and rest first. Everyone in the room then went their separate ways to do their work. The next morning, while I was having a meeting with the sales team as usual in the meeting room, one side of the room had a glass wall, allowing us to see the walkway outside the room. I saw the production supervisor from yesterday standing and talking with the factory owner's son with a serious expression. After the meeting ended, my friend and I slowly walked out of the room. As we walked down the walkway, I overheard the production supervisor saying, "If we don't move the spirit house back, something worse might happen, sir." I wanted to stop and listen, but I was afraid it would be rude, so I walked past, not hearing what else the two of them talked about. After that, I went to get my car to go meet customers as usual. As I drove to the front gate of the factory, I noticed that the spirit house was gone and had been replaced by a parking lot. It must be because I was never at the factory that I didn't know about the moving of the spirit house. I kept my curiosity to myself until the evening. After I clocked out, I went in to ask the janitor auntie where the spirit house had gone. The auntie immediately put her finger to her lips as a signal to speak softly, which made me even more confused. The auntie whispered that the owner's son had ordered the spirit house to be moved behind the factory building because he wanted to build a new parking lot for the sales team that would be hired. I nodded in understanding but asked the auntie, "And why do we have to talk softly?" The auntie looked left and right as if she was afraid someone would hear and replied that after the spirit house was moved behind the building, strange things had happened. So people in the factory were afraid it was because the building's shadow was covering the spirit house. People in the factory were restless at work. Some had accidents that caused bleeding. Some said they saw dark shadows passing by. Before, someone had asked the owner's son to move the spirit house back to its original place, but he refused and said it was nonsense. The owner's son also ordered that no one should talk about the spirit house anymore. I listened and remembered what happened yesterday when the two women said they were hit by a dark shadow and fell down. But I didn't really believe in such things, so I drove home without thinking much of it. However, around 9 p.m., my friend named John, who was also a salesperson at the factory, called and said that tomorrow there would be a ritual to cover the smokestack at the factory, and everyone should attend the event early in the morning. I agreed and asked out of curiosity. "The supervisor didn't mention it in the meeting this morning. Why are they just telling us now?" Jan replied, "It's an urgent matter, sir." The supervisor called Jan and told her to spread the word to the sales team. Jan paused for a moment and then said, "It might be because of what happened last night. I heard the workers whispering that someone saw a worker pushed by a dark shadow and fall from the balcony in the factory. That worker hit the factory floor and died instantly. There was blood splattered all over the factory floor. It was a horrifying sight. Many workers were very scared and asked for leave to go home. After hanging up with John, I lay in bed thinking that the story about the building shadow covering the spirit house that the workers were whispering about might just be a coincidence. That worker might have just fallen due to an accident and it had nothing to do with anything supernatural. But when someone died so horribly, if the factory did a merit-making ceremony, it would probably be a good thing. After that, I prayed before going to bed. The next morning, I hurried to the factory early. When I walked to stand next to Jan in the factory's main hall, I saw people lining up in groups. The front of the line was the factory owner's son and the management staff. I saw the table set up for the offerings for the ritual at the front of the hall. Nearby, there was a person that those around called a master, dressed in white clothes like a Brahmin priest. When he saw that all the employees had arrived, the master clasped his hands together. As he was about to start the ritual, something serious happened. Women in the hall started shrieking and fainting one by one. One of them was Jan, my friend. She lay there convulsing and twitching, her eyes rolling back. After a moment, she fainted. I quickly went to her body and held her. Then I saw a woman standing in the middle of the hall. She looked like she was possessed. Her eyes were blood red and she pointed at the factory owner's son and shouted loudly, "You have to move out. This is the shadow's place that we have occupied for a long time." After that, she fell to the floor. Everyone in the hall was startled by what they saw. Many workers ran out of the hall in fear. Some helped support their fainted friends. In the meeting room, there were only loud sounds of chaos. I called out to another friend named Fawn. But before the master could finish chanting, I heard the sound of light bulbs on the ceiling shattering almost simultaneously, and all the lights in the meeting room immediately went out. The workers screamed in fear. In the meeting room, only faint light from the small windows filtered in, making it barely possible to see inside. While Fawn and I were helping to carry Jan out of the room, I saw a dark shadow shaped like a person, very large. It used its hand to sweep the offerings on the table, making them fall and scatter. Since I was a child, I had never believed in ghosts until I saw it with my own eyes. Finally, my friend and I managed to get out of the meeting room, but John was still unconscious. So I decided to take John to the hospital. Just as we were about to carry Jan into the car, Jan opened her eyes and stared at us, her eyes red like blood, her lips pale, almost white. Then she said in a deep masculine voice like a man, "I'm not leaving." Fawn and I quickly let go of her and backed away from the car. Jan sat in the back seat looking like she had no strength, but her eyes were still fierce, staring at us. When Fawn recovered from his shock, he said, "That's not Jan, is it?" Jan replied in a man's voice, "Yes, I sent someone to do it because he didn't believe it was true." Fawn continued to ask, "Then why didn't you do it to the owner's son? Why do it to the workers?" The voice replied, "He has powerful protection, so I can't do anything to him. I can only do it to those who are weak-minded, and this person I will take with me. Will..." Fawn and I looked at each other in shock. I reached inside my shirt and touched the Buddha amulet around my neck. I was grateful to my mother for giving it to me for protection. Seeing that Jan was in a bad state, and afraid something would happen to her, I immediately took off my Buddha amulet and put it around Jan's neck. As soon as the amulet was around her neck, Jan shrieked loudly. Fawn and I didn't know what to do, so we helped each other chant Namo Tassa 3 times. Then Jan slowly calmed down, and her bloodshot eyes slowly returned to normal, but Jan looked weak and was breathing heavily. I quickly drove Jan to the hospital with Phone sitting in the back taking care of Jan. Jan stayed in the hospital for 1 day and her condition improved, so the doctor allowed her to go home. As for the factory, after the horrifying incident that day, the factory was temporarily closed indefinitely. Phone and I went to visit Jan at her house. Jan looked much better. She didn't remember anything about that day, only that she was standing in line in the hall and then fainted. I told her everything that happened. Jan took off the Buddha amulet necklace and returned it to me and thanked me for helping her that day. A moment later, Jan's friend named Pum came into the house and said that tonight Pum would stay with Jan because she didn't want Jan to sleep alone. As soon as Pum spoke, I remembered the story of the dog barking from the pig pen. Phone and I talked with Jan for a while and then went back. On the way back to the car, Phone told me that the factory was having a ritual to move the spirit house back to its original place. Hopefully things would calm down. When I heard that the factory would be peaceful, I felt relieved. The next morning, Pum called me and said that last night while Pum was staying at Jan's house, she heard a dog howling mournfully all night. When she turned to look at Jan, she saw Jan sleeping with the blanket pulled over her head. Pum then went back to sleep without thinking much of it. In the morning, Pum woke up to do her personal business and finished. She saw that Jan hadn't woken up yet, so she thought of waking her up. When Pum pulled back the blanket, she saw Jan's terrifying eyes. Her eyes were blood red, her lips were pale and cracked, and she shrieked, "Don't interfere with Pum." Pum was very startled and quickly ran out of the room and immediately called me. So I told Pum to keep an eye on Jan from a distance, and I called Fawn to meet me at Jan's house because the entity from the factory had probably possessed Jan again. Fawn suggested that we should try taking Jan to see a revered monk at the temple. I agreed, so we made plans to hurry to Jan's house. When we arrived at Jan's house, I saw Pum standing nervously in front of the house because she didn't dare to go inside. Phone took off the Buddha amulet necklace he was wearing and clasped his hands together. I saw it and did the same. After that, Phone and I walked into the house, telling Pum to wait at the car. When we went into Jan's room, we saw Jan sitting on the bed. She was sitting still, her eyes fixed, not blinking at all. Phone then asked, "This is Jan, right?" Jan remained silent. When Fawn touched Jan's arm, she swatted his hand away and said, "I'm not Jan. Don't interfere with me." So Fawn said, "Okay, the master will take you back, let's go to the car." Jan's eyes started to lose their fierceness and softened. She allowed me and Fawn to take her to the car, but I drove directly to the temple while Fawn and Pum sat in the back holding on to Jan. As I turned into the temple gate, Jan suddenly screamed and thrashed, saying, "You tricked me. I'll take your lives." Jan then started struggling, so Fawn and I had to hold her down with all our strength. Pum was very scared, holding on to her friend and crying at the same time. Finally, we managed to take Jan to see the revered monk. The monk chanted and sprinkled holy water on Jan's body. Jan cried and moaned and then slowly calmed down. The monk gave me a Buddha amulet and told Jan to keep it with her always. From now on, she should observe the 5 precepts and pray before going to bed every night. After that, we made merit, dedicated merit, and wished that all the spirits in the factory would receive the merit. Jan returned to normal, so she strictly followed what the monk said. Not long after that, the factory reopened for work as usual. When I drove past the front gate of the factory, I saw that the spirit house had returned to its original place. So I stopped the car and got out to light incense and pray to the spirit house, asking it to return and protect the people in the factory as before. It came from the sandbar. Hello, my name is Boom. I am 32 years old and I live in the southern part of Laos in Pakse City, Champasak Province. This incident happened 22 years ago when I was 10 years old and studying in Pratham 5. It was in the middle of February. I had a friend named A. We were in the same class. That day was a Friday. We planned to go to the Had the next day after school. Had is a word from my dialect. If translated into Thai, it would be called an island. The characteristic of the Had in my area is that it is a sandbar located in the middle of the river. No trees grow on it because this Had is only visible when the water level is low. During the high water season, it is submerged. During the low water season, villagers would come to plant cucumbers, watermelons, and many other vegetables. My friends and I intended to go visit and eat watermelons there. On Saturday afternoon, A came to my house. After that, we headed to meet 2 other friends who were waiting at the pier. In total, there were 4 of us. When we arrived, they complained a little, asking why I was late. They said we wouldn't have a boat to go there otherwise. But A and I didn't reply. We walked over and negotiated the boat fare to go to the Had. The boat driver charged 2,000 kip per person round trip. If converted to Thai baht at that time, it would be around 10 baht. We paid the boat driver and got on the boat, which took about 15 minutes to reach our destination. At that time, it was 2 p.m. When we got onto the Had, we arranged for the boat driver to pick us up again at 5 p.m. After that, the boat driver left. We walked to a vendor's hut, but no one was there. So we walked to another hut. But out of the over 10 huts we checked, no one was there. When we looked around, we saw that the cucumbers, watermelons, and other plants that were planted there hadn't grown yet. It was as if they had just been planted recently. We looked at each other and started to laugh about wanting to eat watermelons here. One of our friends who had been here before said, "I told you. There aren't any yet. People are just starting to plant. You have to come in the middle of March." A then said, "You should have told us earlier. You told me and San." When I turned to ask San why he invited us even though he knew there weren't any, before I could finish speaking, San replied, "I just wanted to come. And if I had told you to, you might have changed your minds and not come." A and I had never been to this island before, so we didn't know anything about this place. But the other 2 had been here before. Now we were starting to feel bored and didn't know what to do, so we just walked around. After all, we were already here. The island was about 3 to 4 kilometers long and 800 to 900 meters wide. It had 2 sides. One side was the pier where we got on the island, and from there we could see my village, but it was very far away. The other side was also a village, but it was only a few tens of meters away from the island. We walked and talked until we started to feel tired, so we sat down to rest at a hut on the side facing our village. After sitting for a while, one of the friends who had been here before said, "Hey, since we're here, let's go for a swim." As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and jumped into the river. When I saw that, San also jumped into the water after him. The 2 of them swam for a while and then called me and A, but A refused because he didn't know how to swim. And he also told me that he suddenly felt scared and uneasy for some reason. At that moment, I clearly saw his expression change. Both his eyes and his demeanor looked anxious and worried. So I told him, "It's nothing to be afraid of. It's daytime and the sun is out. What are you scared of?" Although I said that, at that moment I suddenly felt cold even though the weather was very hot. So I told A, "Let's just walk around near the water instead." He agreed. After the two of us walked around near the water for a while, the two friends got out of the water. San came over and asked, "Why didn't you go swimming with us?" I replied that I didn't want to get wet. San then said, "Suit yourselves then." And then Mayo added, "If you don't want to get wet, you won't get to eat watermelon." I immediately retorted, "What watermelon?" He said, "If you want to eat, follow me." And he started walking. The three of us quickly followed behind him. After walking for a while, we reached the other side of the island, and he said we would walk across the river on this side to the hut where they sold watermelons. But we had to walk across a river that was about 20 meters wide. Without delay, he quickly stepped down into the water. A said, "Is it deep?" "I don't know how to swim." San replied, "The water is only neck deep." When A heard that, he stepped down into the water after San. I quickly grabbed his arm and asked, "Are you really going?" "You don't know how to swim." He replied, "I want to go. I want to eat that watermelon." So I told him that I would take him myself. I held his arm and we started walking down into the water. At that moment, Mayo and San were already ahead of us by about 5 to 6 meters. I remember well that I saw them walking into the water only up to their waist. As for me and A, the water level was only up to our shins. At that moment, both of us felt like we were falling from a height, like a sudden drop. And then we lost consciousness. After a few minutes, I don't know how long, I regained consciousness. When I looked around, I saw that I was in the middle of the river, which was the widest part of the island. I quickly swam towards the shore, and at the same time I looked for my friends. I saw Mayo and San trying to swim to shore, but I didn't see A. At that moment I was very scared. I shouted and called out for him, looking around, but I didn't find him. So I shouted to the other two friends to swim and look for him together. I dove down to look for him, diving down about 2 to 3 times, but I didn't find him. I started to panic, so I prayed in my heart, "Oh, thank you, Father, thank you, Mother, thank you, Buddha, please help us." Then I decided to dive down one more time, and I saw A standing there trying to come up to the surface, so I quickly grabbed his arm and pulled him up. When the two of us came up to the surface, Mayo and San had already swum to where I was, so we helped each other swim back to shore. After recovering from our shock, we looked at each other and asked what had happened. Why weren't we in that spot? Even though at that moment we were walking to cross the river and were in the widest part of the island, why did we regain consciousness in the middle of the river and also in the deepest part of the island? We were all confused. What was strange was that everyone felt as if they had been pulled down from a height and lost consciousness. At that moment, we were so scared. A was even more scared than his friends. He was crying. He said he didn't know what it was, black and shadowy, trying to pull him down. He spoke and cried, making us cry with him. We looked at the shoes that were in the middle of the river. They had fallen off when we regained consciousness in the middle of the river and were looking for A. The shoes were floating away, but no one dared to go down to get them. We could only watch them float away until they disappeared. After that, we walked to the other side and sat at the hut near the pier, waiting for the boat to pick us up. We didn't say anything to each other, we just sat there trembling. As for A, he cried and wouldn't stop until everyone had to comfort him, telling him that it was over and he was safe. He looked up at us and said that he was also scared just like us. So he stopped crying. We waited for the boat for a long time. It felt like an eternity. It wasn't until after 5 p.m. that the boat driver came to pick us up. We were so happy. We quickly got on the boat and sat there quietly. No one said a word. When we reached the shore, we went our separate ways home. I had to walk A home first. I had to find him some old shoes to wear because I was afraid his mother would ask what happened to his shoes. And his mother did ask, because the next morning his mother came to my house and asked, "Where did you go yesterday? Because my son has a high fever and keeps crying and saying he's scared." So I had to tell his mother the truth, and I was scolded and warned not to take each other to that place again under any circumstances. After that, his mother went back and tied a white string around A's arm and mine to call our spirits back. From that day on, we never dared to go to that island again until we finished Pratham 5. A's family moved to a different province, so we lost contact. As for me, I didn't go to play on that island for a long time, even though my friends invited me many times. Time passed until I was studying at a teacher's college in Pakse. I was in my second year. My group of friends who were close to me invited me to go to the island again. At first, I hesitated because I was still scared. But in the end, I agreed to go because 2 of my friends who were locals would be going with me. That day was a Friday and we didn't have class in the afternoon. 7 of us rode motorcycles there and left the motorcycles at a friend's house. After that, we walked across the river to get to the island by taking a short boat ride, only about 20 meters. When I was a child, my province didn't have a bridge across the Mekong River. We had to rely on boats. But by the time I was in college, the area had become much more developed. We walked to the other side and got onto the island by taking a short paddle boat ride, only about 20 meters. When we got onto the island, we walked around and ran around. When I looked around, I saw that there were many people visiting. Perhaps it was because it was the watermelon season. On the way back, we had to take the paddle boat back to shore as before, which required dividing into 2 groups because there were 7 people and we couldn't all go at once. But when the first boat was about to leave, 3 of my male friends who were waiting for the second boat said, "It's a waste of time. You don't have to come back for us, we'll race each other swimming back." My friend who was a local objected, saying, "Don't do that. Wait for the boat to pick you up. I'll come back for all 3 of you myself." At first, the 3 of them hesitated and agreed, but after my friends and I reached shore, when I turned back, I saw them racing each other swimming. I didn't pay attention and quickly went up to the pier with 2 other friends. But the female friend who was waiting there shouted loudly, telling us to hurry and swim back because something was coming for them. The 3 of us quickly turned back and ran towards them. And we saw bubbles in the water. They looked like soap bubbles. The bubbles appeared and followed the 3 of them closely. The 3 of them swam until they reached shore, and the female friend said the bubbles had disappeared. She told the 3 of them to quickly get out of the water. But I froze. What I saw standing in front of me was the bubbles. The bubbles were still there and something was slowly rising out of them. At that moment, I stood there trembling. What I saw was a woman, black, with long black hair dripping wet. She pointed at me and said, "Do you remember me?" It made me panic. and the incident from 8 to 9 years ago came back to my mind again. My 6 other friends saw that I was acting strangely, so they shook my body and said, "Hey, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And I fainted. When I regained consciousness, I was lying at a friend's house. My friends asked me what had happened, so I told them everything I had seen, but they said they didn't see the same thing as me. They only saw the water bubbles following the 3 friends. When the 3 of them reached shore, the bubbles disappeared. I decided to tell my friends about the incident from 8 to 9 years ago. After I finished telling the story, my female friend, who was a local, told us a story from her mother. She said that this place was haunted, and people drowned here every year, especially during the New Year season, and it would be even more haunted. But even so, this island became an important tourist attraction of the city when the water level in the Mekong River dropped. And I don't know if it is still haunted, because after graduating I moved to work in a different province and haven't had a chance to go back there since.